Welcome to the Friday check-in. Thanks for coming. My name is Ray Goins. I'm the Behavioral Health Intake Coordinator with Behavioral Health Services at Howard Brown Health. And I use she, her pronouns.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Haley Van Serkey. I use she, her pronouns. I manage the teams across the different organizations at Howard Brown for the BHC team.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about stress and anxiety and how those things affect the body, how they're related. And then afterwards, Haley will be leading a meditation for all of us to engage in. So yeah, what is stress? So the term stress, as it was coined by Hans Sale in 1936, is defined as the nonspecific response of the body to any demand for change. So I like this definition of stress because it is a much more neutral definition. I think we often think of stress as being very negative or like a bad thing to be experiencing, but there are actually many experiences that we have throughout life that cause a stress response that are positive. So there is the negative aspect, like I'm thinking of when you have a deadline or you have homework due or like you hear a baby crying, like these things cause a stress response that you have to respond to. But there are a lot of positive things like finding out you got a new job, which is really exciting, or meeting a new romantic partner. These also cause the body to have a reaction, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah, going to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Yerkes-Dodson law. So this is the idea that that stress happens on a curve, which I think ties nicely into this idea of stress, like not necessarily being good or bad, but being kind of neutral but context dependent. So when our stress is very, very low, it might mean that, we're sleepy, we're bored, maybe we're feeling kind of depressed. So having really, really low stress isn't necessarily a good thing because it can mean that we're not really engaged with life. We're really hypo-aroused as opposed to hyper-aroused. Whereas if you move up to the curve, this is kind of optimal stress. So feeling like a little bit of, or feeling some stress that allows you to be engaged. So you're not overwhelmed, but you're actively engaged with whatever it is you're doing, whether that's hanging out with your friends, cooking a meal, working, etc. So you're definitely like awake and engaged. But once you move past that optimal amount of stress, that's when things start to get hard. So that's when you're moving into anxiety, you're moving into overwhelm, which could cause you to be in fight or flight, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So yeah, going to the next slide, I want to talk more about fight, flight, and freeze. So if we go back to this Yerkes-Dodson law, this like low stress area, I think of this as like the freeze response. And then over here, the higher stress part of the graph as the fight or flight. So yeah, okay. So yeah, the fight, flight, freeze response, it's a natural reaction to danger and perceived threats. So it causes hormonal and physiological changes that allow you to protect yourself. So specifically, fight or flight activates a defense response where you fight or you run away. So that will increase your heart rate, increase oxygen flow to like your leg muscles, your pain perception goes down, the ability to like use the bathroom goes away. These are so like your body can just really focus on getting away or fighting. And then freezing is another way to protect yourself. That's a very primitive response that allows us to just like stay in place, hoping that whatever's threatening us won't see us. And it's not a conscious thing, it's just something that happens automatically, so we can't control it, but we can become more aware of these responses in our body and figure out better ways to cope with it when it happens. So yeah, oh, whoops. So we talked a little bit about what's happening in general with fight and flight. That activates our autonomic nervous system, or well, rather, so there's two parts of the autonomic nervous system. So there's a sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So the sympathetic is what drives the fight or flight response, while the parasympathetic, which we'll talk more about, can either kind of lower that fight or flight response, or it can activate the freeze response. So just it kind of depends on how you're reacting, like which system is getting activated. So yeah, when the autonomic nervous system is stimulated, your body is releasing adrenaline and cortisol. So yeah, we talked about this a little bit. Heart rate will change, so it'll either go way, way up, or it'll really decrease if you're freezing. Similarly, like your lungs, you'll be breathing very heavily if you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, fighting, or you can really develop like shallow breathing if you're freezing. And same thing for other parts of the body. Um, let's see, like you might get sweaty or like get really pale and cold, depending on which response you're having. So yeah, some ways that we can cope with these reactions. We can do some psychological coping, which is what we're going to do together. So if you're in the fight or flight, doing deep breathing can really calm the system and activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And it could be visualizing, meditation, anything that's like really calming, like yoga, and regrounding in the body in a calming way. Physical coping, so this can be really helpful for either one. So if you're feeling really depressed, hypoaroused, doing some physical coping, like doing some jumping jacks or going for a run, really getting that body activated is really helpful to get more to that optimal level of stress. But it can also be a great way to release like fight or flight energy. And additionally, getting good sleep is also really helpful for both of these things. Yeah, and then the last slide, social coping. So it's just really important that we work to maintain social relationships, like especially in times like this when we're kind of vacillating pretty regularly between anxiety, freeze, maybe feeling kind of neutral. But those really sudden changes, like seeking out friends, staying in touch with people, can be very regulating for our system. It's good to be able to talk to people about what we're going through, but it also activates us and kind of can help pull us out of hypoarousal, just by engaging with the world, engaging with other people, being very social creatures. So yeah, I think that kind of sums up what I have. So I will stop.
The mindfulness exercise we're going to practice today is actually an eyes open exercise. So as we practice together, sometimes I'll invite you to close your eyes. Sometimes you can leave them open. As always, we invite you to do what feels the most comfortable for you. As we get settled into this, I'll walk us through our breath. And then we're going to do a little bit of observing of an object in your space. When we talked on Wednesday, one of the things we talked about was this idea of a beginner's mind. What I mentioned back on Wednesday was that if any of you know a 2-year-old, that's a pretty good age to pick. Sometimes when you give them a present, you'll notice that they're actually not super interested in the present itself, rather the packaging and the paper and the tape and the bow. Those are the things that they really explore and try to learn more about. It's this sense that you've never seen something before, so you're studying it in all kinds of ways to get to know it in a new way. So this exercise is one of the things that we can do to try to get to know something in a different kind of way. It's also an exercise that asks us to maybe go from kind of big, broad thoughts into something that's a little bit more specific. So it's just changing the amount of things maybe we might be focusing on during whatever the time frame is, and then working to kind of expand or bring it into a more smaller, compacted situation as we go throughout our day. Because sometimes we do have to see the big picture, and sometimes we want to see the little picture. So that's what this exercise will practice also. So as always, before we get started, find a place wherever you are that feels comfortable. For some people, that's having your feet on the ground and feeling rooted in the ground. For some people, that's actually having your legs out and feeling like you can stretch. I always invite people to kind of roll your shoulders and your neck or your head, just to get a sense of what your body's telling you. And as you settle into your space, I encourage you just to pay attention to your breath. And just notice your breath. Notice if you're breathing from your belly or from your chest. And if it's available to you, try to take some big, deep breaths from your belly or your diaphragm. And just take note of where your thoughts are. If they're not on your breath right now, it's okay. Gently invite them back to your breath. And just noticing the air as it flows in and out of your lungs. And again, just notice where your breath is and try to expand it just a bit more, taking in a little bit of a deeper breath and letting it go just a bit more. Again, just take notice of the thoughts. They might be hopping around. You might have gone somewhere else. That's okay. Gently invite yourself back to the breath. I invite you now, if your eyes were closed, to open them and to find an object in your space, a neutral object. Depending on where at, that might be a pencil, that might be a pen, it might be a picture on the wall, it could be a doorknob, it could be anything that feels fairly neutral to you. And I'm going to invite you to watch that object for just a minute or two. And while you're doing this, look at the object as if you've never seen it before. Notice where your thoughts are going and gently bring them back to the object, exploring all the pieces of it. There's nothing you have to do right now. You're just there, watching the object. Again, your thoughts may go in different ways. That's okay. Gently bring them back. Look at the textures and the shapes of the object that you have. try to find all of the different shadows or colors that might be a part of that object. And just notice. You might also notice that you're having an emotional reaction. You can notice that also. And then gently bring your attention back to your object. In whatever way feels real, connect with that object in the way that feels meaningful. Taking a second to appreciate however that object and you interact. Whether you've noticed it before, or this is the first time. Again, just notice your thoughts and anything that might be coming up emotionally for you. And gently attend back to the object. If it's available to you, try to send some appreciation to whatever the object was for being there in the moment to practice with. And then you can return back to your breath for a few counts. Again, just take notice of what your body's saying. Take note of your breath. Again, try to take in a breath or two that's just a bit longer and a bit deeper than the ones before. And then you can reconnect back into your body, shifting or moving your legs, your arms, your neck, whatever feels helpful to bring yourself back into the room. So that is one of the brief practices to try. When we're there in the moment, typically we can struggle with that, just staying with something in the moment. So it's a good thing to practice. And I hope that as we practice that, we can work from coming from kind of big generalized thoughts into small kind of contained ways to deal with stress in the moment. Touch base with your body, touch in with something that is kind of concrete around you and connect with that as a regrounding. And then, of course, you continue on with your day, knowing that this is going to go in and out as we practice and reconnect you with the world around you.